Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Iron Anchor Cycles. So hopefully you caught our last video where we went on the hunt for some Dynas that we could buy on the cheap, put a little bit of money into, and hopefully turn them into something cool. And well, this is gonna be the continuation of where we left off in that last video. So I'll leave a link up top if you missed that intro video, but if you caught that video, you'll know this is the 2006 lowrider we picked up and kind of started to de-oldify, if you will, and get some of the, artificial chrome covers and stuff taken off the bike and start to get it looking the way we wanted and kind of mocked up with a set of temporary bars here. And I said we were gonna start another video where we were gonna actually start to do the modifications we needed to do to this bike to get it looking the way we want it. So that's what we're gonna do today. I'm waiting on some parts that we ordered and a little recap from the last video. We're gonna get a taller set of shocks, so I've got those on order. We're gonna go up to either 13 or 13 and a half inches, depending on the adjustment on them, which I think is gonna be the perfect ride height for this bike. I love a 14-inch shock, however, didn't decide to go that way, and also the 14s really pair better with a raised front end as well too, but nevertheless, that's a story for another day. We've got some 13 and a half inch shocks coming. We've got a set of Thrashin mid-bend bars coming, which are roughly 4 inches in height. And then I've got a 6-inch riser in chrome that'll match here. It's actually on the other bike we bought. So we're gonna be taking it off of there and putting it on here. And I've got some black bars and risers to go on that bike. But in any event, that bar and set of shocks are on the way. So in the meantime, what I'm gonna start working on is getting this riser replaced. So if you recall from the last video, I kind of was talking about one of the only drawbacks of these early, I guess early is not the right word, early 49 millimeter lowriders. The really early lowriders, the ones from before 2006, do not have this issue, and the latest generation of lowriders, Dyna lowriders, the like 14 through 17, those don't have the issue either. It's these middle year lowriders, 06 to around, I don't really know what year to be honest, probably around like 12 or 13. They have the indicators up here on the riser clamp, and there's really no good way in an easy just bolt-on solution to move these. There's not a, the other top clamp you could get that'll work with a better riser. So most of these bikes that you see for sale just retain the factory riser because it's such a pain to move these. Well, we're gonna try and go the extra mile for whoever gets this bike next and allow them to run whatever riser they want by relocating this indicator little pod here down into the tank console. So basically we're gonna wind up pulling this out of here, making a hole in there and getting it locked in, and hopefully you guys will like the way it looks. I think it's gonna be a good modification. Obviously we could just leave these risers, but I really don't want to. They're a decent height, but if somebody wanted to get to like a 12-inch setup, I mean, we're gonna run a 10-inch total setup, so 4 inches in the bar, 6 inches in the riser, but these lines and cables are long enough to do 12. So that to me is the number I would be running if it was my bike, and you're just never gonna get there with this short riser. You'd be running a crazy tall handlebar and it'd look and feel dumb. So I'd really like to put this bike in a place where the next owner can really do whatever they want with it. So that's the idea. That's really all we have to do on here. I obviously started kind of looking at the maintenance stuff on this bike. You'll notice the air cleaner is off now. Actually there is something else, I'll get to that. Air cleaner's off because I was cleaning that filter. That came out fine, so we don't have to replace it. Still have to check the fluids. But one thing I wanna mention, I was talking about getting rid of chrome stuff, and I have the perfect 2 examples to show you of what my issue is when you cover other things with chrome, like top covers that don't belong there, right? So I was saying like chrome parts don't bother me, but little like bolt-on covers that are like that chrome trim, it's not only to me does it look really cheesy, but you also ruin the thing that's underneath it. So here's a great example. All right, so this is the air cleaner cover that was on the bike. Now, I wasn't sure what exactly this was, if this was a replacement of the center section or this was a whole other air cleaner, but it turns out is all this is a plastic top cover that goes over your existing one. So hopefully you can see it on the camera. This is all oxidized under here, and you're never gonna fix this. So this is, well, this inner trim ring anyway here, it's ruined because of having this cover over it. Now, truthfully, who cares about this? It's just an example. I mean, these are a dime a dozen, and we actually I found a replacement on eBay. Not a lowrider one, it's one of the Screamin' Eagle ones, and this does have a Screamin' Eagle Stage 1 kit on it, so I found one of those for 20 bucks, so no big deal, got that replaced. The other issue, and in my opinion a much bigger deal, is this that I see all the time that I fucking hate. This is a crappy chrome cover that goes over your master cylinder when you're, chroming out all the handlebar controls. Harley sells chrome master cylinders. If you want a chrome master cylinder, go buy a chrome master cylinder. Don't do this. Number one, these look stupid. It's not the same. You can tell that it's different, and these are dumb. Next problem, and I'll zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. So here is the master cylinder that was living under that chrome cover for probably all of its life. And as you can see, it is completely destroyed. All the paint is peeling off of it. It looks terrible. The cover, the master cylinder itself, this is, these things do get corroded from, .4 brake fluid, but not nearly this bad by having that cover on there, trapping all that moisture. Truthfully, it's probably moisture getting into the master cylinder as well too, because it's all trapped under there. So bad. This part is ruined now. This is garbage. So I had to find a replacement master cylinder so I can change this because I'm not putting that chrome cover back on. So now I have to replace the master cylinder and flush the brake lines, which not a big deal, but don't ruin parts on your bike. Those chrome covers, so think about any place you might find those chrome covers on a bike, whatever's underneath it, it's gonna get ruined. Last little detail, the way that cover attaches is it replaces the OE screws that go in here with these little standoff screws that screw in and close the cover and then have threads in the top for these little teeny tiny screws to go in to hold the cover in place. I was able to get one of them out, the other one I had to drill. Again, corrosion, oxidation, they're so small with these teeny little Allen head button screws on there that the likelihood of them getting screwed up and getting stripped, it's like 50-50 at best. So this is just trash. So, whatever. At the end of the day, did a replacement master cylinder cost me that much? No, but I bought a used one and maybe it'll be in good shape, but then again, maybe I'm gonna have to rebuild it and use a rebuild kit, so that's more money and more time. Just things that didn't have to get ruined, but did by having a cover over them. Anyway, so that's my soapbox for today's video. But as long as we're here, we can take a kind of closer look at what we've got going on with the riser clamp and the gauges. Let me see if I can just get some of this stuff out of the way here. Just find a good place to let that hang. All right, so if I pull this tank cover off, so hopefully you can see everything what we're talking about here. First of all, you gotta love the giant clock that the previous owner stuck in here. I don't know why you'd need to know what time it is that badly, but hey, I guess he had somewhere to be. But this is the riser clamp that we're trying to get rid of. And honestly, it's just, the riser itself, in addition to just being a little too low, I think for most people, it's just ugly. So I'm getting rid of it. So the idea here is we're gonna pull this little gauge indicator light pod out of here and we're gonna stick it here in between the two gauges. Now, I mentioned in the previous video, it's not gonna look factory. The part where the lights are, you'll be able to see with no obstructions between the gauges, but the gauges are gonna kinda hang over the black trim on this a little bit, so you'll be able to tell that it was modified, but truthfully, I think most people would rather functional risers that they can do whatever they want with and say, the hell with wherever this is, just put it somewhere. So, I've got my neutral light and my turn signal lights and oil light and all that stuff, but it doesn't need to be anything crazy. So I'm hoping that the next owner in the market out there will agree with me that moving this down onto here is a good idea, because that's what we're gonna do. So I think from here, my plan is to start doing a little bit of disassembly. I'm gonna get this dash console removed so we can start working on it. And I'm gonna get this removed as well, so we can kind of get this traced onto here and hopefully get it done in short order. So we'll see how that goes. But that's what we're gonna get started with. So stick around if you wanna, check this stuff out, and we'll get rolling. All right, so I'm not certain if these plugs are not pinned, but like if they're clocked differently so that you have to put the right one in the right place. So I just snapped a quick photo of them so that I can make sure that I install them back where they came from. Okay, so we've got two main plugs here disconnected, and then we've got the little trip switch, which the button on the outside should unscrew. There we go, and it'll just pop through. All right, so put the button aside. So now we got our console here. So hopefully you can see right in between here. That's where I'm gonna try and put this. So put this aside and start to get this disconnected. All right, so the lights themselves are gonna stay connected. We don't actually have to disconnect any of this. We're just gonna have to pull this trim out, which clicks into the lights with these little tabs. Actually, you know what? It'll be easier to see when I pull that out. I'll show it to you. So if I'm not mistaken, this should just pop out. Yes, indeed. I do not want to break this. Okay. So this is the piece we need to relocate. So you don't really need to do anything special in terms of cutting that hole, because this just drops in. So we just need to cut a hole that is the right size, and the lights will lock it into place. And these tabs is what's gonna hold that light pod where it needs to be. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do here is get the gauges removed so we've got some more room to work. So just gonna pop the screws out of the bracket in the back, and the gauges should just drop right out. All right, so with the screws removed, this will all come apart. One thing you'll notice here is we do have something else that we're gonna have to figure out, which is obviously this plastic going across here is gonna be in the way of our new lights. So I think what's gonna have to happen is we're gonna have to cut that center section out right in here. Hopefully I can figure out a way to make these gauge retainers still work without this piece here in the middle. So I'll figure something out, but we'll come back to that. And then with that gone, the gauges are probably a little just stuck. There we go. I don't want to mess up there we go, the weather stripping. So we got our tack and Speedo. Speedo's a little bit more stuck. All right, there we go. All right, Speedo. Okay, now the idea here, and actually just so I don't mess it up, I'm gonna pull, maybe I'll leave this in place. Some of this rubber trim was falling off and some of it's not, so I don't know. I don't know if it makes more sense to take it off or just to leave it while we work on it. Well, I'm gonna leave it as long as I can. So now, looking at this, we're gonna try and get this guy stuck right in here. So hopefully you can see here. Well, you'll see, I know these spaces this space looks really small. Oh, the camera's not even in the right spot. How about now? So if you come back here, you can see that we will be able to get this whole shiny part, which is where the lights are, to come through. And because you can't see any of it sticking out, so just gonna stick it right in there, and then this will be kind of what the backside looks like. So my plan, I guess for now, is to start to get some marks on here so I can start to cut this obviously really carefully, because my guess is that this is going to be an expensive thing to replace if I screw it up. So I'm going to try not to. So I'm going to get to marking and cutting and show you how it goes. All right, well, here's my handiwork. Got the bezel put in there. So this is what I was talking about, you know, the gauges kind of overhang a little bit. So it obviously isn't factory, but it's in there, it's straight, it's gonna do the job. Here you can see on the back what we had to do. So that X that connected the gauge brackets together, I cut that off. I was a little concerned that it was gonna weaken these, but they're holding the gauges really snug, both of them. So I'm not worried about that. And then our lights are gonna just click right in here, and hopefully we shouldn't have a problem getting that to seat down in there. Truthfully, this took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. There was kind of more to it, right? Having to modify this plastic thing was no big deal, but you know, you can't trace this. You kind of have to take measurements, and I did that with a caliper and traced, and so it was a lot of, so I cut it out with a Dremel, like cut-off wheel, and then you know, just kind of back and forth, like cleaning it up with a file until I could get this to fit, obviously all the while keeping it straight and centered. And then over on the tank, there's an issue there too. So the brackets that come up and kind of go like this, that the bolts here go down into, get in the way of the actual light pod from going in there. So I tried bending them and trying to do what I could, but that did not work. So what I'm gonna wind up doing is, I think the tabs that are there that hold the little like spring nuts or whatever they're called, I'm gonna cut them off and I'm gonna weld nuts on, but I'm gonna do it on the other side so that I give myself more room on the inside. So I measured that, it should work no problem. I'll show you that before we put this back on, but hopefully we are almost done with this nonsense and we can just get on to doing some more fun stuff, some bars, some shocks, and we'll have this bike wrapped up, hopefully. So stick around and we'll keep rolling. All right, so here is how the dash is gonna look on our tank now, and I'm pretty jazzed about that. So I mentioned before we had to do a little work here, and what that was that this bracket originally had these little tabs, and they were kind of coming out like this, and these tabs were bent further in. The issue with that, and these little tabs had little spring nuts, whatever you call these, in them for the nuts, for the bolts to go into. The issue with that was, this is the lights for the indicators. It wouldn't fit in between these arms when they were pushed in further because the tabs were on the outside. So hopefully that makes sense. There wasn't clearance to get this in here, and that's where this is gonna sit, right here in between the bolts, if you remember from the cover. So I tried kind of bending these around to make them work, and I think, honestly, if I had done a better job, I probably could have just taken these from the outside position that they were in and folded them over like this. But I tried it, and they were still in the way, and it was such a problem. And honestly, I made a little bit of a mess of it, to be totally honest with you. And they wound up getting weak from the bending. And so I just said, forget it. I'm gonna just cut these off. And honestly, I didn't even have to cut them. I just bent them like this and just broke them off. And then I came and just welded on 2 5/16 nuts, which are gonna accomplish the same job. Now, obviously, the benefit of the setup that was there before was that these had some play in them. You could move those spring nuts around to get the console centered on the tank. That, I guess, is good from like a mass manufacturing perspective, because they don't have to get it perfectly lined up. You know, you have that adjustability, and you just, when you're screwing it down, it's really not a big deal, because this is, you know, really thin, like, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch sheet metal or something. Maybe it's more than that. I mean, it's 1/8 inch is what it looks like. You can manipulate them, right? So all I did was just kind of bend them and move them and get them so the holes were perfectly lined up to get the tank centered, or get the console centered on the tank. So it's not the prettiest thing in the world, you know, I mean, nuts welded onto this, but you know, you're not really ever gonna see it, and they're certainly strong. I mean, I got like, you know, big fat tacks on each side. It ain't going anywhere. It's not holding any weight or anything like that. So it's gonna work, it's functional, and we're gonna be able to make the modification that I wanted to make. So I'm gonna call it a win. Now, going in the order of chronology, what would make sense to do right now is to get this console on here and buttoned up. The problem with that is I don't know which side of this is left and which side of it is right. And obviously that matters to get the lights lined up with the shapes on the bezel. So you could turn the bike on and, you know, hit your turn signals and you'd see which one is which, or, you know, find the, you know, the lights that match up. Problem is, I don't have any switches connected, so I can't turn the bike on. What I'm going to do is hit pause on this until we get the bars done, and then once the bars are done, I'll have switches again, and I can figure out which light is which, and then we'll get the console wired back up and screwed back down. So for the time being, I'm just gonna put these wires out of the way. I'm gonna move the console over back to the workbench, put the tank cover back on, and we're gonna get to wiring up the new bars, which have now arrived. So the bars are here, the shocks are here. The only thing I don't have today, so I'm gonna have to finish it up tomorrow, is the new master cylinder. But hopefully tonight, you can actually see exactly what time it is right now. It's 6:42 p.m. Hopefully tonight I will get everything aside from the master cylinder done. That's the goal. And then tomorrow we'll do the master cylinder and flush the brakes, and I'll be able to ride it, warm it up, check the fluids, see if there's any other service stuff that needs to be done, and hopefully this bike will be wrapped up and, you know, we can get it listed for sale. So I'm gonna go over to the workbench and get our new bars wired up. And actually the other thing I have to do is take the risers off the red bike. So I'm gonna go and do that now first, actually. So I'll grab those risers, then over to the workbench to do the handlebars and wiring, and I'll meet you guys back here to start getting the new parts bolted on, and we'll see what our new bar and riser setup's gonna look like. All right, well, our bars are on, sort of. What I've come to discover is, number one, that my microphone was off, so you probably missed everything I was saying about putting these on, but in any event, hopefully you got to see it. What I had said, I believe, when the microphone wasn't working was that I wasn't sure if these bushings were going to be good or not, and we'd check them. I've cranked this down, and this is no good. This is all just movement in these bars. These bushings are no good. So I'm gonna put a set of Alloy Art poly bushings in. So basically the riser and bar are good and attached. I like the angle the bars are at. I think I might wanna push it a little bit forward. But for the moment, I'm just gonna pull the whole thing off in an assembly, swap the bushings out, and we'll get it back on, and hopefully we can get it tightened down nicely. All right, 1,000 times better. Moving the whole bike now. Just wanna make sure I locked them in straight. And we are looking good. So, at this point, I kinda wanna just have a feel here. Yeah, I guess where's the seating position? Around here? Yeah, that's pretty good. I might like them tipped forward just a little bit, but that might just be me. I don't know. I don't know if everyone else is the same. I'm gonna try tipping them forward just a little bit, just cause can't help myself. That's the spot. As long as they're still straight, that's the spot. That's the spot, right there. Let's see what we got. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's the spot. Get that angle nice and flat across here. None of this going on, this pushed out. Yeah, that's it right there. Yep. Awesome. That's how those bars are meant to be. Okay, I think it is time to get this wiring connected. Maybe get the switches and stuff on here, and then we can finish up the tank. All right, so got our bars pretty much set up now. I just went ahead and connected pretty much everything here. I wanted to get the switch pods connected so obviously we could turn the power on and check our lights here, but figured might as well get the purchase put in place and kind of everything on here as well. One thing I forgot about was I was gonna have to put new grips on here. I mean, I could have reused those horrible chrome and rubber things that were here, but I had a pretty nice set of these aluminum and rubber Avons, kind of look like the PM grips. I've had them for a while, but I think they kind of work on this bike. Now, obviously the master cylinder I mentioned has to be changed, but I figured just putting it up here in place is as good a place to hold it as flopping around on the tank. And then I found in my takeoff box a black clutch perch, which I knew I had a bunch of these from all the one finger installs we've done. I kind of like the black and chrome contrast. So like chrome levers with black grips, like I like that. I don't really like the chrome switches and switch housings. These ones I'm pretty sure are at least genuine Harley. The aftermarket ones, like the Chinese ones, are awful. The buttons feel weird. These are at least good. I don't love it. I just didn't have any black ones to put on and, you know, didn't really want to spend the money on replacing them. So you're gonna have this black and chrome contrast going here. I think it'll look a lot better once we get this master cylinder out of here. But obviously, and I know I've said this before, the whole key here is it's got good bars, you know, nice ones that you would ultimately want to run. The risers, you know, obviously it's a decent height. There's definitely room to go up 2 more inches. I had to sort of reroute the clutch cable and the brake line I sort of pushed down to kind of get rid of some of the slack. This bike would be perfect another 2 inches up. It would be the absolute perfect height for the cables that are on here and also my personal preference for bar and riser height. But what I was getting at was if you use a riser that is 2 separate pieces like a Thrashin riser, for example, you wouldn't even have to pull the wires out of the center of the bottom of the riser. Literally to change the riser on this bike, all you'd have to do is unbolt the riser, unbolt the top clamp, pull the bars back, stick the new riser in, put the bars in, and bolt it down. Literally, if you own 2 wrenches and have any mechanical knowledge whatsoever, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, that's about all you need to know. You'd be able to swap this for a cooler riser. So this one does the job, but for a flip, wasn't gonna spend, you know, a fortune on a riser that somebody could easily change now that we've got all the rest of the legwork taken care of. So that said, let's turn the key on. And looks like we've got lights, that's good. Turn signal works, turn signal works. That's, ever watch Thomas the Tank Engine? That's Gordon. Anyway, so looking at our indicators here, presumably that is the oil pressure light. That's gonna be neutral. But the obvious way to tell which side is which is with the turn signals. So we've got it facing the right way. So there's your left indicator and there's your right indicator. So this green dot here is the top, and I'm just gonna not try and remember that. I'm going to only have to remember that for a minute while I go grab a Sharpie and put some arrows on here, or mark right and left on the side with the green dot. So I'm gonna mark that, and then I think it's time to get the tank assembled. And then I'm gonna go through the task of getting these wires tucked away in here. These wires are way too long. To be honest with you, like if I really had it in me, I would shorten all of these. even if you went up on the bars, these wires are still too long. They were too long on the old bars, I think. This is one of those situations where whoever did the original bar job on this bought a universal, wiring extension kit like we use that are, long, like 12 or 16 inches long. And rather than measuring and cutting and making the wires the right length, I think they just soldered on the whole thing. And we're just like, I'm gonna have a lot of wire. This was gnarly getting these wires out of here, partially because there was so much in here, but also because the way they stuffed them in, the wires are all tangled and twisted. So we'll do a better job putting it away when we do it. But first things first, gonna do the tank console, get that done. We'll see what it looks like. And then we'll deal with these wires and then throw some shocks on. All right, so I think our first step here is gonna be, might as well put the new piece in. So if you remember, there were kind of these fingers in here, and this should just be able to just get clipped in. Hopefully that works as planned. Good, 3 out of 4, and that's 4 out of 4. All right, that's in. Feels good, honestly. I was worried I might have to put some tape on here or something, but that seems to be working really well. Just for shits and giggles, we've got neutral, oil, right, left. I like it, I really do. I think it's cool. All right, so I think now the next couple of steps, we're just gonna have to get these harnesses plugged back in and get these wires tucked away and be able to bolt this back down. So I have a lot more wire in here this time. This big extra loop here from the tack. All right, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna unplug this harness from the bike, like that. And I'm just gonna bring this over to the workbench and get this all laid in nicely so that I can just not worry about scratching up the tank. And I'll bring it back over, I'll show you what I did, and then we'll get it put on. All right, so this is my first attempt. I just sort of looped the indicator light harness kind of down around the bottom of the tack and then up. I guess we'll find out if this is gonna work. This also used to come out further, this harness here. I think it was further up. I hope there's enough slack on this to get this plug inside the neck. It looks like it'll be fine. So I think it should work. Just undid my handiwork here. Let's go ahead and get this test fit before it decides to pop off again. All right, that like that like that. That actually seems pretty perfect and just the right amount of wire on there. Seems like things are falling into place here. Okay, I'll tell you, at the time, this kind of started to feel like it wasn't worth it, but now that it's done and you're free to do whatever you want with the risers, I think this is a huge selling point for this bike, that this is taken care of. And honestly, it's kind of a cool spot for it. So that is that. I'm gonna try and get these wires all tucked in and we'll take care of some shocks. All right, got the wires all tucked in. Maybe you can see this side, it's probably a little dark up there, but it actually was not as terrible as I thought it was gonna be. I've had worse. I think because we took so much time to clean it all up in there and I was careful about tucking everything in, it went in pretty well. So I said we were gonna do the shocks. Got a couple of little things I wanna take care of and then we'll knock the shocks out, I promise. First is that cover I mentioned that I got on eBay for 20 bucks came in. So it's just like says Harley Screaming Eagle on it. I think that's pretty cool. For 20 bucks, it'll get the job done. Air filter's back on, I cleaned it. It cleaned up really nicely. It was pretty black before and now it's pretty white. So I'm happy about that. So we can go ahead and stick this cover on. One more thing before we move to the shocks is this brake pedal is about a mile too high. This should be like down here. On a Softail, you kind of need to raise it up higher, M8 Softail, so you can get the leverage on it to actually make it work. But the Dynas have good rear brakes. You don't need this, and this is no good. This, at least particularly me, I got weird ankles. They don't move a lot, so I wouldn't be able to get my foot on here. But I'm gonna lower it down to just normal position, which is, I don't know, a lot lower than this. I broke loose the jam nut on here, so all I should have to do is turn this, that way is down. These pegs are also leaned forward. I'd like to flatten them out, but I don't know. I want to kind of look at the other side. You know what? I'm not gonna do this now. Let's do the shocks. I'll deal with this maybe later if it needs it. All right, let me get repositioned and we will get these shocks put on. It should be pretty easy since we've already got all the hardware kind of figured out and got everything all broken loose and threads cleaned. So should be just a couple minutes and we'll see the new ride stance of this bike. I'm pumped. All right, ready to go. Start getting these old shocks off again, hopefully for the last time. Just off camera while I was moving around, I went and looked at that peg on the other side. So the peg on the right side is tilted down like this. The peg on the right side is tilted up. So it's got kind of this going on. So we're definitely gonna fix that. The other thing I just noticed, I was looking at what you guys see. I'll take a step back. This already, even without the shocks, is already looking like a proper Dyna. I love how the new bars make this bike really start to look actually good. This is gonna be a cool bike. I'm 100% certain of it now. So anyway, I've got the jack with the wheel, the weight off the wheel, so we can go ahead and take these shocks off. Okay, so this is one of the new shocks we're gonna be running. So I can't remember if I mentioned what shocks I was planning on going with in the beginning of the video. It's been a couple of days. I changed courses from everything I was thinking about when I started looking through what was available and realizing that these shocks, I have not actually ever sold a set of these, but I have had some bikes come in that have these shocks on them. And on a budget, they're a pretty reasonable deal. They certainly do not compare to your top level shocks, Öhlins, Legend, RWD, that kind of stuff. No, rebound adjustment or anything like that, but these are the Drag Specialties premium adjustable or ride height adjustable shocks. So there's the box. I'll actually leave a link to these in the description if I remember to do it, just so that you can kind of check them out. But they're very inexpensive. They're ride height adjustable, obviously preload adjustable, but the height thing was really what I was going after on this. So these shocks cost less than half, I think, maybe half, but probably less than half of what a set of Legend Revo A's do. Probably about half of what a set of Revos are. This shock is the 13-inch length, which is adjustable with this collar down here at the bottom, a ½ inch in either direction. So as low as 12.5 or as high as 13.5. So I adjusted these out to just under the maximum. I didn't want to go right to the max. I just don't like being at those limits like that. So we're at 13 3/8, so very close to 13.5. So hopefully you'll be able to see here, we've got a ways to get this bike jacked up. And obviously I can lower these back down if that's too high, but I think it's gonna look pretty good. So I'm gonna start raising the bike up to get the shocks lined, and you'll be able to see how much travel we have coming up here. You might have noticed, I did too, ran out of room here. The rear wheel started coming up. So I'm not sure, oh, here we go. We're caught on the exhaust bracket over here. So this is gonna be a problem. We might not be able to get all the height I wanted out of this because of this bracket is now lifting the axle, which means it's gonna contact the bracket. So let me lower this back down and see what we can do. Okay, I've got the bike jacked way down, kind of stuffed to get the swing arm to come up as high as possible with comparison to the muffler here. So what was happening was this axle cover was hitting this bracket for the rear muffler. Now, this is a whole bunch of nonsense. I mean, I really don't want to sacrifice ride height for a crappy pipe that's probably not gonna have a lot of life left on here. But the very first thing I'm gonna do is take this cover off. I don't love these covers anyway. I wanna take this off and see how much clearance we actually have between the actual axle and this bracket. I think it might actually clear. I've never really run into this issue before, but if we do have an issue, I might have to just go down a little bit on the shocks to 13 instead of 13.5 or 13 3/8. But let me take this off and we'll see what we have for clearance. Okay, well, that was pretty simple. Got that cover removed, and hopefully you can see now. Now I have the bike jacked up to 13.5 inches, which is just a little higher than we need. You can see the axle comes right past this bracket with about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch of space in between. So we're good, nothing to worry about. I'm just gonna remove the cover, the matching cover this on the other side. Don't need them, no big deal. Let's keep rolling. All right, so we should be pretty close to our unsprung height here. So I'm gonna take the hardware and spacers that we figured out earlier and get this guy installed. Okay, let's see how we're looking here. Oop, another problem. Shock wants to contact the muffler now. Well, let's see what we got here. Yeah, that I'm not gonna be able to do anything about. So we are gonna have to come down a little bit. It's all right. This is looking really high on this bike, to be honest with you. I mean, for me, 1000%, love it. Give me as much height in the rear of a Dyna as I can get, but maybe that's not for everybody. So I guess my solution is we're just gonna take that 3/8 of an inch out and hope that gives us enough clearance here. I think it should. I mean, it's pretty close. Even if there's, you know, no clearance here all the way, the bike's never gonna be totally unsprung. So you don't need a whole lot of clearance when it's at this height. You wanna make sure you got that clearance when it's at ride height. But obviously, we're not gonna put it on in a situation where it's actually contacting. So that's too bad, but let me take these off, shrink them down a little bit. I'm gonna start by just doing one, and then I'll do this one first, get it as much height as I can that'll get it in here and clear, and then I'll match the other side. Okay, I went down 3/8 of an inch, so we got 13 inches now on both sides, which is kind of where I think maybe makes a little bit more sense anyway, but I think we have the clearance we need. I'm not 100% sure, but I gotta put the bolt in and kind of check both sides and see where we wind up. So I got the top started, put the bottom in, and we'll see if it all goes and clears. All right, so with the wheel off the ground, we've got like the hintiest of hints right there of clearance. And honestly, I might even be able to put those stupid axle covers back on, but I'm gonna leave them off because I think they're dumb. That's where we gotta be. I did actually wind up just loosening up this mounting bracket on the pipes, and that's how I was able to kind of move them around here to manipulate where I needed them to be. And then we'll just tighten this back down and we'll be good to go. So that is not a height you're gonna see when the bike's on the ground, right? Because when the weight goes on it, it's gonna sink down a little bit. But we will very soon be seeing what the kind of final stance of the bike looks like. So let me grab a torque wrench, torque these, wipe some stuff off, and well, it's 9:30 now. I got more bikes to work on tonight, but I'll be back on this tomorrow to do the master cylinder, and we'll take it for a ride. So stick around and we'll keep rolling. All right, so this is the final, call it curb height without the rider weight on it. I think it's pretty perfect, honestly, for the average person, unless you like a really tall bike, which a lot of us do. I'll be honest with you, being the suspension snob that I am, I wouldn't run these shocks on my own bike. I think they're fine for a flip. I think they're better than what was on there, but truthfully, the absolute first thing I would do if this was my bike, if I was the one buying it, is This pipe would come off. I'd put on a proper 2-in-1 pipe that I actually liked. I think a chrome thunder header would look awesome on this. That will get the muffler height down lower, and I would replace these shocks with whatever height you wanted of a premium shock, Öhlins, Legend, RWD, whatever. Me, that's 14 inches, which you'd have plenty of clearance for with a 2-in-1 pipe. So kind of kill 2-3 birds with one stone there. That's what I would do. Obviously, that's too much money to put into a bike that we're gonna, just sell. I'd also deal with this to get some LED turn signals, a little dress up stuff. But in terms of the functional things, the opposite, what I would do is shocks and pipe. That would be if this was my bike. But I gotta tell you, I think this bike as it sits right now is looking awesome. This is almost unrecognizable to what it was, and really, what did we do? I mean, I put more effort into taking things off this bike than I did into putting things on it. We did some cleaning. Obviously, this was kind of a big deal, having to do that, little modification of those indicators. Like, I think a lot of people might be scared off by that, but really, we didn't spend a whole lot of money. I mean, I bought, a set of bars, I bought a set of shocks, inexpensive, but still. This seat was obviously not the one that was on it. It had that solo seat with the backrest. This came with the bike, so this is the stock seat. The guy who sold it to me gave it to me with the bike, so on it goes. I'd probably change that too, if it were gonna be my bike. But again, seats are personal, so I'm not gonna put a seat on here unless I know who it's for. So that is kind of how she's looking. So like I said, I'm gonna jump on to some other stuff. I'll be right back for you guys in 2 seconds. For me, it'll be tomorrow when I got that master cylinder in hand, and we'll get this thing totally buttoned up, get the brakes done and take it for a ride and see if it needs anything else. So hopefully we're almost there. All right, I've got my replacement master. I took it out, looked at it. Looks pretty clean. There was no fluid or anything in it. Looks like somebody did a nice job of cleaning it out. So I'm gonna hold off on rebuilding it. I'm gonna just assume it's gonna work, and we'll put it on and try it. If it doesn't work, take it off and rebuild it. So first thing I'm gonna do here is just get the brake line off of here. All right, so there's our old one. I'm gonna reuse this chrome lever. It matches the other one, and it's in really good shape, so pop the pin out, put in the other master, bolted on, put some fluid in it, and we'll get the brakes bled, and hopefully that's it. All right, so here's our replacement. It's obviously not perfect, but being able to find one that was clean, used, was a little challenging, but this is actually really, really good. So no big deal. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this mounted up. All right, let me grab some new banjo bolt washers, get this connected, pour some fluid in, good to go. All right, so just like that, we've got it bled, nice firm lever here. Typically, your single disc non-ABS bikes are always gonna be the easiest to bleed because it's just one straight shot, one line, you know, no T-fitting or anything like that. So didn't expect any issues, and we're good to go. So I'm gonna grab the cap here, throw that on. Boom. And we're almost ready to take this bike for a ride. Just got to get these turn signals reconnected with the new mirror, or the original mirror put on, I should say, and pull the bike down and go for a ride and see if it needs anything else. Obviously, we'll get it back up here on the lift after we test ride it to check the fluids and see if there's anything else it needs. So yeah, we're getting there. All right, well, that's gonna be a wrap on this 06 Lowrider. So just took it for a test ride and it rode great, no issues at all. Took a look at the engine oil, looks pretty new, so we're gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna check the transmission fluid again once it's cold, but I don't see any reason to think that there'll be anything wrong with that. If there is, we'll change it, but we're gonna end the video here. This guy's ready to go. I think the small changes we made in terms of new stuff made a lot of difference on this bike, but truly, like I said before, it's really more about what we took off the bike. Really brought this bike up to the sort of modern standard of like kind of what a Dyna is supposed to look like. Got all that extra superfluous stuff taken off, and I think it's looking really good. There's, of course, some things that I would do if this was a bike that I was keeping for myself. I'd put a taller riser on. I think these wheels would look sick, powder coated in black. Definitely would do a pipe, probably put better suspension on it, but yeah, maybe 2 over front end for me anyway. But so still lots of little things, the next owner can do and customize, but I think we got it to a spot where it's clear that this is, a cool bike, which is what we were going for. And it was definitely a bit of a diamond in the rough when we started. So I'm gonna start cranking away on the red bike now, and hopefully we'll have a video on that one coming pretty soon. And of course, if you're interested in buying this bike, it's gonna be for sale very shortly. So keep a lookout on, you can follow us on Instagram, you'll see it there, or Facebook. But yeah, like I said, that's gonna do it. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.